Welcome to Clever Title Pending with your host, Brian K. Morris, independent publisher, freelance hybrid author, award-winning playwright, and former mortician's assistant. Don't send him title recommendations because Brian knows exactly what he's doing. So just sit down and look pretty as Brian K. Morris scrolls through your comments and plays with his mouse. Join him on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, for Evening Pandemonium and Moonlight Madness.
There we go. My mic's unmuted now. I did remember the last second. How the heck is everyone? Hope you're having a great Tuesday evening. Welcome to Clever Title Pending. And it's our newly minted interview show, and I'm really excited because I get to talk to my friends for an hour or so, and also you get to ask questions of our guests. And we've got two incredible guests this evening, both a pair of novelists. They've got quite a body of work out there. And they're just fun people, and I adore them all the heck. So let me unmute their mics because I know they're going to have. They're going to have to unmute themselves because they did it for me. So anyway, we are going to introduce to you. If I hit the right button, there we go. Cindy Koepp and Charles F. Millhouse. Good evening to both of you.
Hello.
How the heck are you two?
Great.
Good.
Fantastic.
All right, just making sure. See, sometimes I ask questions I know the answer to already. But anyway, people are starting to come in like Cindy Koepp is the first one in the door. How did she get an advantage here? Sarah, Ted Davies, Benjamin Shadolic Starkey, Charles F. Millhouse. I know him too. Jess and Marie Stuckey, and Bill Sarden. And Sarah, glad you like the music. And folks, those of you who are watching, we welcome your questions and comments. We won't be able to read everyone's comments because we want to hear what these two have to say this way, one of these ways. Anyway, I've only been doing this how many years now? Anyway, yeah, it's more like that. So anyway, we want to hear what these wonderful people have to say about writing. And if you are a budding author yourself, you may want to grab a pen and paper because if you like taking notes, tonight's going to be the best night of your week, I promise. Author Michaela Jade, glad to see you here. And Teresa Dunn, as always. And Sarah says, nice to see your faces.
Hi, Sarah.
Woo!
You see, that's the one nice thing about this show is that, a lot of the people who are in this chat and will be in the chat as names, and you might be friends with them on Facebook, but you see like the little ones and zeros, and now you get to talk to them directly. And good evening, Brian, Cindy, Charles, and all the Pendarians. And we've already got a question. Cool. I talk right over him. That's what I do. I get so excited. Sorry. And we're joined by Sherry Fredericks, Nick Tuckard, Wayne Iliff, Jessica Johnson, David Beam, Rochelle Lester, Andy Davis, CM Davenport. You guys, I'm going to have you on every week. I'm just going to stay home. So anyway, let's start with Cindy here. Please introduce yourself and tell everybody how awesome you are, okay? And then we'll go to Charles.
Howdy, my name is Cindy Koepp. I write science fiction, fantasy, game lit, and teacher resources because one of these things is not like the others. You can find my stuff at my webpage, which is ckoepp.com.
All right. Charles?
Oh, my turn. Hey, guys, I'm Charles F. Millhouse, independent author of 22 books, including the Captain Hawkland series. You can find the body of my work on my website at stormgatepress.com. And I am also a personal chef. I do that during the winter months when school is in, and when it's summertime, I am putting pen to paper or keyboard strokes to computer and writing my life away.
Fantastic. All right. Cool. Well, we'll start this round with Charles, and the usual hackneyed questions that I come up with. Tell us about your writing journey. When did you know that you wanted to become a writer, and what steps did you take to work towards that?
Well, when I was really young, You hear a lot of people say, well, when I was really young, I wanted to be a writer. When I was really young, I couldn't read very well. So I turned to comic books like a lot of us did. And comics got me to reading. And then from comics, I went to reading novels. And then as I started reading novels, I started to realize that I had stories I wanted to tell too. So as I was growing up, living in Athens, Ohio, I'd sit on the front porch with my one of my very good friends, Paul Ruff, and we would tell stories back and forth to one another. So then I just eventually started writing those stories down. But it wasn't until 1999 that I decided I was going to publish. And even though I sent my stories out and got rejection, I said, I'm going to do this myself. And back then in 1999, there wasn't what we have now for resources. There wasn't, social media, the print on demand, ebooks, none of that stuff existed. So I had to make my way as I went along. And that's when I started self-publishing my books.
Very cool. Before the digital age, huh?
Long before the digital age.
Wow. Oh, that's very cool. We'll probably have more questions about that coming up. But Cindy, what about you? Same question. What brought you to where you are today?
Well, I don't remember actually. I was on some pretty nasty meds when I was growing up, so I don't remember until I was about 12-ish. I was already writing short stories by then. Most of them were X-Men fanfic. And that gradually mutated to writing my own series. Most of those will probably never be published, but they were fun to write, and I learned a lot doing it. I started trying to get things published in the early 2000s, and then I had multiple novels that were just about ready to go, but I tried them out in different houses and eventually landed at one. Landed Remnant in the Stars at a small press that went under about 2 weeks after we signed the contract. But they were pretty good about it, and they used all their resources to find a new home for anybody they had under contract. And a year and a half later, Remnant in the Stars was published. And I have 7 books out, a passel of stories in various anthologies, and another novel coming out at the end of this month.
Very, very cool. And what's the name of that book?
That one is going to be Animal Eye. It's a gamelit novel.
Excellent, excellent. Now, before we go on, some people might not be familiar with genre, which the genre of gamelit. Can you explain that a little more? What that is?
Sure. Gamelit is a story that takes place within a game scenario. If you're familiar with the more recent Jumanji films, those were gamelit. Tron will also count. Ready Player One, some people say yes, some people say no, but generally it's in that general area. The main character is a player in the game, and the story is about them solving quests and advancing their levels and gaining skills and experience points and doing all the usual game stuff.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. Now that segues into our first question from our audience here, and that is from Sarah. Sarah, first of her questions, and she's promising a lot of them, so brace yourselves. What is your favorite genre? And I'm going to spin that a little to favorite genre to read and to write, which may not be the same thing. So Cindy, let's start with you on this one.
My favorite one to read is science fiction. Particularly if I need to narrow down further, space opera. So I'm a big fan of Star Wars and Star Trek and that sort of thing. My favorite one to write varies depending on what project I'm working on, how far I am through that particular book, and whether or not I'm about ready to throw it out the window.
I think we can all relate to that one. Charles, what about you? What's your favorite to read and your favorite to write?
Well, it's for both. Science fiction. I'm a huge Dune fan. I've read Dune just about every summer since I graduated high school in 1983. Wow. So I'm a big fan, waiting for the movie to come out this year, if it ever does. So I like to write science fiction, and then of course I like new pulp and pulp-related stories like Doc Saga and The Shadow and those kind of characters. Zorro, as you know, we talked about that the other night.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's led me to start writing the Captain Hawkland series. So, but science fiction in general, and I always put kind of a sci-fi twist to my pulp stories too.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. And now we've got a question from Teresa Dunn, also an author. And I know she directs this later on to both of you. How long have you been an author, and what struggles did you have writing your first book? I'll throw this up. Who wants to take it first?
I got it.
All right. You
Okay.
start, Charles.
I first published in 1999, so for 21 years, I've been a independent publisher, writer. I didn't know a lot about writing when I started. Matter of fact, my first book is no longer in print because I chagrin when I look at it. But a lot of struggles was just learning the editing, learning the flow of the story, learning that plot and story are two separate things. And just basically learning your voice is what they call it. Once I learned that, I was up and running. But that first book was a bit of I was trying to tell too much in one story and have too many points of view in a story, because, like I said, I'd read Dune and I was trying to emulate Frank Herbert, and I know Frank Herbert. So that's my biggest challenge, was just learning the flow of the story and just learning my voice.
Very cool. Very cool. Cindy, what about you?
Ooh, the first book that I published, the tricky bit was turning it from a collection of short stories into one coherent novel. The path that it took to get there, it started out as a GURPS space campaign. And it's me and a bunch of high school buddies sitting around a table playing GURPS Space. I wrote up the adventures as short stories just for the giggle snorts. And then later on decided I wanted to convert that into a novel. Well, what I had for the short stories was not that fantastic. Especially when you plug them all nose to tail and try to turn them into a book. Mm-hmm. I needed to come up with a coherent plot line to get it from point A to point B, and then threw in a couple extra subplots just to keep things moving. And that one took a long, convoluted path. Take a look at what Remnant in the Stars is now and compare it against the adventures of Aerosmith that it started out as. Mm-hmm. Hardly the same creature anymore.
I can relate to that. I tell people that my first book, I actually wrote my first novel coming out of college. And when I moved, 6 years ago, when I moved from Illinois to Indiana, I made sure that that was destroyed. Because I was convinced that, I'd have had like a better career, like if I start out like in a sex tape with some barnyard animal rather than have this book go out. It would leave more of a luster to my career. So I made sure every page of that was just completely destroyed. No one will ever see it. There was nothing salvageable about it. So I understand what you were thinking, Cindy. We have a question now from Bill Starr, and this is for both of you guys. When did you both realize that your dream was becoming reality? Your dream of becoming a writer, and was it always a dream for you guys? Was this something you knew from an early age? This is what you wanted to do.
You first, Cindy.
Alrighty. It was something that I always wanted to do, but I wasn't sure I could. I didn't know how, and I got some very negative feedback very early on. And so I had to overcome that to move forward. When I first realized it might actually happen was when I got the contract from Virtual Tales for Remnant in the Stars. Then I got bummed out about 2 weeks later, but it recovered, and it was picked up by Under the Moon, which was another small press, and they chased it all the way through to publication and bought not only the first book but the second book.
Okay, cool. Charles?
I think I realized that my writing dream was a reality when I was interviewed for a newspaper, and I saw the article in the newspaper soon after that with a picture of me holding my first book, and some of the feedback I got from the people who had read the article. And of course, my friends were always supporters, and my wife. Without her, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So, but I think it all began right there with that article when I said, "Oh, okay, here we go," and it's been flowing ever since. So,
That's great. That's great. All right, and we have another question from another author here, the one, the only Michaela J. Glad to have you here tonight, hon. What is for you both? You're both self-publishers now. Now, Charles, are you printed by someone else at this point?
Not yet.
Not yet. You will be. I promise you will be. Full disclosure, it's me. But what is the hardest part of self-publishing for both of you? And I'll start with Charles this time.
The hardest part about self-publishing is probably the advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Not only do you have to sit down and write your story and edit your story and make sure it's everything you want it to be, but then you have to take that story and you have to keep going. It's a lot like owning a restaurant. You're married to it. You never walk away from it.
Yeah.
Once you write the story, you can't say, okay, it's written, I'm done, I'm going on to the next thing. Yes, you've got to go on to the next thing. But then you got to think about, how am I going to promote that book that I just wrote? I need to get it in front of as many people as I can. So you're constantly doing that. You go to sleep at night thinking about promotion, and you wake up thinking about promotion. And then you have to sit down and you have to write and put that aside for a minute. So it's a 24-hour thing. You've got to constantly just keep thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. Cindy, what's the hardest part for you, Cindy?
Well, actually, all my fiction is published through small press at this time. That may change in the future, but right now it's all through small presses.
Okay.
I only self-publish stuff with my teacher resources, and the hardest part was figuring out how to format those. Partly because teacher resources are a little odd.
In what way?
They have to be organized in such a way that the information is in the order that the teacher needs it, and is in a way that it can be presented to the students without giving the answer away too fast.
Okay.
Easily available so that the teacher has a quick check for the work.
That does sound like a challenge. I'm glad you're doing it and not me. Bill Sarton has a question now. What authors did both of you read growing up, and which ones inspired you both to write your own books? And I know this one may take a moment here. Show of hand, who wants to take it first?
I will.
There we go. Good man. All right, Charles, what's your answer?
Well, of course, I said Dune, Frank Herbert, definitely. But I'm also a huge fan of the Logan's Run series. And I like, who else? L. Frank Baum, actually. It's one of my favorite writers. Wait a minute, I'm hearing something. What'd you say? I didn't know Jim Butcher when I was growing up. No. my peanut gallery in there is my cookie is in there.
Hi, Marianne. I hear you.
But yeah, Jim Butcher is a big influence today with my writing because his words just flow off the page.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Cindy, what about you?
I read a whole lot of Star Trek and Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys growing up. A whole lot. And I got into X-Men comics and read pretty much any one of those I can get a hold of. For pretty much all of junior high and high school. And all of that had a pretty solid influence on my writing skills. Much later, authors that had a big influence would include Janet Kagan, who wrote Hellspark and Mirabile, Gordon R. Dixon, who wrote the Child Cycle series, Victor Hugo, Les Miserables.
Cool.
Even this really strange stuff like the Chet Gecko series. If you like pulp stories, those might amuse you. They're sort of sarcasm heavy takes on things like Casablanca and Murder My Sweet and Malted Falcon.
Oh, nice. That sounds cool.
They're hilarious. They're meant for fifth graders, but they're absolutely hilarious.
Well, that sounds cool. That is cool. Now, have you gotten to meet any of the people who inspired you as you were coming up as a writer? Now, I'm sure you didn't meet Victor Hugo on the way up, I'm sure, unless you had a seance. But who have you met any of your literary idols, either before or during your time as an author?
Kathy Tyers is the only one I've met.
Which one? I'm sorry?
Kathy Tyers.
Oh,
she wrote the Firebird series. She wrote a couple of the Star Wars novels. I think she wrote one of the Star Trek novels. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Cool. Charles?
The only author I've met, well, actually two, Brian Herbert, which is Frank Herbert's son, and Kevin J. Anderson, when they were doing a book tour a few years ago, promoting one of the Dune books. So they're the only two mainstream authors I've met. I've met, Brian K. Morris and
it's all downhill from there, right? Anyway. All right, and we've got a question now from Teresa Dunn. If you both were to write a script about your life, what would you say and how would you end it? Ooh.
Oh.
All right.
Be continued.
Good answer. Good answer. All right, Charles, she's vamped long enough for you. What's your answer?
Never the end. Never the end.
Yeah, I wonder where you got that one from. Anyway,
yeah, I wonder where I got that one from.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, check out Charles' page, Charles F. Millhouse presents, because he started an.
Tell people that.
Oh, I'm not supposed to tell people about your page? Dang,
I stole the idea from you.
Oh, no, I want all the credit I can get, especially when I have a good idea, okay? The one tag hashtag, it is not Brian's fault this time. And by the way, folks, if you're looking at the crawl across your screen, please check out the work of Charles F. Millhouse at stormgatepress.com and check and enter the many worlds of Cindy Koepp at ckoepp.com. Plus, you can sign up for their monthly newsletters. And you will be amazed and thrilled. And not only that, but you'll be thrilled and amazed. Also, we've got a question here from Ted Davies. Do you feel science fiction writing today is better than science fiction writing you experienced from years ago, such as Star Trek, Star Wars, Dune, etc.? Do you think the quality of the genre has improved over the years?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is, yeah. That's why I wanted to ask it.
I think the quality of writing has, in my opinion, lessened some. It's more of a fast-paced action adventure thing, where I'm more interested in characters, slowing down and knowing who these people are rather than what they can do.
That's a good question. That's a good answer. I like that. Cindy, what about you? Do you think it's improved or declined, in your opinion?
It depends on how far back you go. I've read some of the 50s and 60s stuff, like Asimov's books and Rendezvous with Rama and things in that era, and I think it's improved from there. Star Wars is actually very complex storyline. It has since changed in a downward direction as it moved forward, but when you look at the original plotline, it was really quite complex. Star Trek, I think, also had a lot of brilliant ideas, but because of the 45 to 55 minute format, it didn't get to explore them as much as it could have. Modern science fiction, it does tend to be much more action adventure and a much faster pace. I don't necessarily think that's bad, though, because you can still get into a lot of character design with it, but you just have to move the story along. So from, say, the 1970s and 80s to now, I don't know that it's declined as much as it's just shifted direction.
Very good answer, and a very good question. Thank you for that one, Ted. Now we've got a multi-layered one here from David Beam. Brace yourselves. You each have one. Yeah, David,
Oh no.
Yeah, Charles and I know David, so Cindy, I'm sorry. Anyway, we love you, David. Charles, you said plot and story aren't necessarily the same thing. Can you elaborate? And I'm going to lower this so you can answer, so everybody can see your happy face there, Charles.
Sure, I can elaborate. Plot is okay, real simple. He went to the store to buy ice cream, and while he's at the ice cream, he gets robbed, and he's got to figure out what who robbed him and why. That's the plot. But the story is the man who got robbed. Who was he? Where did he come from? What kind of life did he lead? And what led him to go to the store to get robbed? And that's the difference between plot and story. Plot is setting it all up, but story is telling it is expanding the plot.
That's a great answer. Very good. You've obviously thought about this, young man. And now, Cindy, you said you got some negative feedback early on. How did you overcome that?
For a long time, I didn't. In fact, that I stopped writing for about 5 years. And after that happened, then I decided I have a whole lot of stories I want to tell. And I started looking for more information on how to do it. I started analyzing works that I thought were very good and trying to emulate those. And I looked for constructive feedback, not just what I was doing wrong or what I was doing right, but why. Once I started to understand the why, then I was able to fix the issues and focus on the parts that were more positive.
Very good. Very good. I'm glad you found that, because we all need that attaboy every now and then. That is very, very good. Now, David Beam also goes on to ask me, did you say sex tape? Yes, I did. Made you look. Anyway, Meredith Walgren says, hello, friends. Tuning in from the fridge. I always like to say hello to Meredith. Hello, Meredith. See, everybody loves you, Meredith. And Michaela J., do you have a tribe or a group that helps you?
A couple, I think.
You first, Cindy.
Okay. I'm part of a group called Realm Maker. It's a group of science fiction and fantasy writers who are Christians. They hold a conference every year except this one. For some strange reason. They moved it online. But I went to the conference the last 2 years. That's where I met Kathy Tyers. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback. I went 1 year as a writer and the second year as representative for Bear Publications as acquisitions editor.
Nice. Very cool.
So, I mean, I've met all kinds of interesting people, got some excellent feedback. But then I'm also part of other groups, some more formal than others, where they're a cluster of folks like Brian. I can annoy with questions on and off and much more on than off sometimes.
Yeah.
And get some great advice there too.
Cool. Well, thank you. And now, Charles, what about you? What do you have a tribe or a group that is in your corner pushing you forward?
As not really a group that I go to on Facebook, but just the group of friends that I have made on Facebook, like you and David Beam and Paul Ruff. Of course, I've known Paul all my life, and Bobby Nash, and a lot of the writers over to the Pulp Factory who give you input. So that's kind of my core group right there. And if I have a question or I need some advice, I usually reach out to one of you guys.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, like Beetlejuice or Candyman, you say his name and up he pops. Bobby Nash.
Bobby.
Hey, Bobby. Good evening to you, my friend. That's BobbyNash.com. Not that I've memorized anybody's websites or anything. But anyway, Bobby Nash asks, what are some of the best promotion ideas that work for you? Charles, let's start with you. I see that wide-eyed terror look in Cindy's eyes, so let's give her a moment to compose herself. Charles, what about you? What do you say?
Well, it's hit and miss, but usually usually videos. The videos I do, because when not just the ones where I stand in front of the camera and talk about my books, but the ones where I interview people, not only does it bring people who like Bobby or like Brian to come and see the video, but then they see what I have to offer too. And that is probably one of the best promotions I have been able to find is using other people as a springboard to bring their readers to me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Back in the day, it used to be Twitter, but we all know what happened with that. And I could leave a tweet and I could sell 4 or 5 books, but then that's just slowly changed. Now it's too much of a click. You really got to know, you got to get into Twitter and just, kind of kiss people's butts basically. But with the videos I can put on YouTube and I can put on Facebook and I can put over on Instagram, those really help.
Very cool. Very cool. And Cindy, what about you? What have you found works best for you?
Never the same thing twice. I've done Facebook events to launch books and did fantastically. Did it the next time, bombed. I've used Facebook ads. The first 2 went nowhere. The last one seems to have done pretty well. I hired 2 different. I've done blog tours. One was DIY. The other one was hired. The first one bombed badly. The second one did slightly better. Ran a blog for a while. Closed it down after the publisher that required it in the contract went under because I got tired of talking to myself.
Yeah.
And I had excellent results from a web serial that later became the book Condemned Courier. Tried another web serial, couldn't get traction on it. And it's been that kind of thing where I try it one time and it does great, and I do it the next time and I get.
Yeah. So you just have to try everything, right?
First, don't succeed. Do not take up hang gliding.
Yeah, Charles.
One month something it works great. The next month it doesn't. So it's all miss, I guess. I don't know if it's the time of the year or the weather or what, but it seems like one thing will work at one time and then the next time you go, why it's not working again? I'm throwing more money at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I just to interject myself here. That's why I do so much guerrilla style promotion. Try to, if I find something that does work, I try to tell you guys. And it's like right now, I think Facebook is fiddling with us again in throttling down some of our access. Granted, we are in a strange time and more people are wanting access for communication with loved ones and friends, but they don't realize how important the 3 of us are. That's all there is to it. Their priorities are totally askew. So anyway, so we just have to keep trying. Now, C.M. Davenport says, now, out of all your books, which one do you relate to the most? And who wants to take that one first?
You first, Cindy. Go ahead.
Alrighty. Oh, let's see. One of mine that I relate to the most. Mindstorm.
And why is that?
Mindstorm is about a telepathic negotiator and a psionic physician. The negotiator is Thomas, and he blames Kala, the physician, for the death of his partner. Kala has a disability that limits her psionic abilities. And she has to overcome that to be able to eventually use her disability to solve the problem. And the reason why I relate to that one is because I've been disabled for many, many years, and I've had to find ways to overcome that to still prove that I can accomplish what other people can do. And sometimes it's because of the disability I have, I was able to help somebody else out with a problem that they had.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah,
that is
good.
super. Super. Charles, your turn.
I'm not sure if I relate to any of my characters, but I feel like they're good friends that I hang out with. Like the Captain Hawkland series, every time I sit down to write a new story of that, it's like, what are these guys going to get me into this time? So it's like hanging out with good friends. As far as relating, I mean, he's Captain Hawkland is a rich millionaire and travels the world. I'm not sure I can actually relate to that, but I can follow him around on these ventures, and Oz and Hardy are just a hoot to hang out with. So I think that's how I don't look at it as relating to my characters as much as I just like hanging out with them.
That's cool. That's great. I love that. And David Beam says, thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Charles. All right. And then turns around and mocks me with his laughter. I see how he is. Anyway, Bill Sarden asks now, are you both a pantser or plotter in writing? And do you imagine ever changing that style in the future? We'll start with Charles this time, since he pushed Cindy under the bus last time.
Okay.
So what are you? Are you a plotter or pantser or what? And do you see yourself continuing in that way of working for the foreseeable future?
I'm a pantser. Sometimes I have the basic idea of what the plot. I have the basic idea of what I'm going to do. And I sit down and if it's a brand new story and I have the basic idea in my head, I'll sit down and I'll just start writing. For me, writing the first draft is writing the outline. And then I'll have a tablet next to me. And when I create a character, I'll write everything down about that character as I write them in the story, hair color. That way they got the same hair color by the time at the beginning of the book, by the time you get to the end of the book. And same with eyes and height and all of that. But would I ever change that to a plotter? If I wrote a book with another person, I think you'd actually have to really plot that book out with the other writer, so you're not stepping on each other's toes and you both know which way you're going.
Makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Cindy, what about you? Or which one are you? And are you sticking with it?
For an extreme contrast, I am a plotter to an extreme. I take notes, more notes, lots of notes. My notes have notes. I have had 30 and 40 pages worth of notes before I start writing a draft. That includes everything you ever wanted to know about the characters, their world, maps of places. For the Gamelit novel that's going to release soon, we came up with all the game mechanics. In fact, so much of the game was produced just to write the book. I'm seriously thinking about turning that into a game scenario. Most of the work's done.
Yeah, nice. Good thinking.
So I plot everything, and then when I start writing out all the scenes, I write by scenes, not chapters, and I chapter the thing later, sometimes right before I send it to the publisher later.
Wow.
So I will write out my list of all the different scenes, and then as I get all of that done, bits of dialogue will sometimes occur to me, and so that'll show up in there too. And so as I'm writing it, I'll go back through there, read the bit that goes with the part I'm going to write that day, and sometimes it'll even have the dialogue, pieces of dialogue written out, and from there it's just really easy to go ahead and write the draft.
Nice. Interesting way of working. I like that. Lumosion, another writer, says he doesn't have a tribe, just the need to get things done, as do we all, all too frequently. David Beam says that's a good question, Bobby Nash. We agree. And now Bill Sarton has another question, and it's a good one here. Considering that our current pandemic has shut down most of the conventions for most of the year, what is your plan B? All right, who wants this one?
I think my plan B is trying to figure out a plan B. Not quite sure what that is, but every day I wake up going, I need to do something different. And every day I get another show that's being canceled. So my plan B is still trying to figure out what that's going to be.
I hear you. Cindy, what about you?
Well, going to conventions was my plan B. That's a relatively new phenomenon for me. I went to a few last year and hit or miss. So I was going to do more from this year. Yeah, that didn't work. So I'm either doing a trainload of these things in July through September, or they're going to keep getting pushed back to the point where it's not real safe to be traveling across Iowa. So what I've been doing in the meantime is going back to what my plan A was, which is trying to promote across social media, focusing as much as I can on writing the next thing, trying to collaborate with other folks on cool ways to get things done, taking advantage of any opportunities I can find, like the 3 charity anthologies that went up this year, up this spring actually. And there's a fourth and a 5th one planned for the fall, but they're still hashing out the details on those.
Right. Yeah.
So I keep watching for opportunities and try and grab anyone that runs past slow enough for me to get it.
Yeah, I hear you. Bill's asking about Plan B. I think I'm on Q and R right now, so yeah, I fully relate. Now, you mentioned, Cindy, real fast, that you write some books for charities. Would you want to explain what those books are and who they are benefiting? Because I know the answer, and it's a real cool one.
There have been 3 of them so far. One of them was called Warriors Tribute. It's a gamelit anthology to benefit with the Wounded Warrior Project. So all the stories in there have to do with a group of people trying to accomplish a specific task, usually involving some kind of sacrifice. The other 2 were for the Australian wildfire rescue efforts, and they're called Rise and Rescue. Much bigger group of gamelit authors involved in those. Those books are huge. 20 plus authors contributed to those. And so all of those have to do with rescue efforts. So all the short stories in there, they're all gamelit, but they all have to do with rescuing somebody.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, how'd you find out about those opportunities, in case other writers might be interested in getting involved in something that benefits other people like that?
Those came about in a couple of gamelit groups that I'm involved in on Facebook. The 2 organizers said they were interested in putting an idea together and wanted to know if anyone was involved. If you are, let them know, and then they would add you into a specific group to plan it. And so when I got wind of those, I went, me. And they added me into those groups, and so I was in on hashing out the details and then writing the stories. The kicker with those is you have to get your own editor. Where most anthologies, the publisher provides the editor. For both of these, because the individuals publishing them aren't actually a small press, they asked all of the authors to find their own editor first. Not impossible. There are genre-specific editors out there, but that was an extra expense to get going.
I see. Well, that's cool. Thank you. And Bobby Nash says, great answers. There we go. Bobby thinks you guys are awesome. I do too. Meredith Logrins goes, I know the feeling of throwing out a wide net, hoping something will catch because it's tiring talking to myself. I think we all can relate to that. Rick Bradley, another author here, asks, any genres that you would like to tackle? Cindy, are there any genres you haven't tried yet that you'd like to give a shot at?
Gamelit was the new one for me in this last year. Actually, last couple of years. Aside from that, I wrote a short story that was kind of steampunk, sort of, and so I'd like to take another whack at that. I'm also getting into some sort of pulp fiction. That's a new phenomenon for me too. The Doc Saga phenomena is very different, and I'm hoping I can get the voice right on that. But that's new.
Cool. And what about you, Charles?
I'd like to write some high fantasy.
Nice.
Several years ago, I wrote a short story that's still sitting on my laptop about the barbarian with no name, and I wanted to turn that into a novel eventually. It's basically about a barbarian who is chasing this army across the world, trying to reclaim what they had stolen from him, and that's about all I'm going to say about it, because the idea of what they stole from him is part of the plot of the barbarian with no name.
Nice. That's cool. That's cool. And from my dear friend Mary Hackett, well, glad to see you. What is it's a pantser, actually. And I'll take this one real fast. A pantser is somebody who writes by the seat of their pants. They just make it up as they go along. Sometimes with some, there's Charles, but we like him anyway. I'm becoming in between, actually. Like, I'm currently writing a short story, a Captain Hawkland story, yay. And I find myself, like, plotting it out in detail like I normally would, and there just reached a point because of the word count. I realized I'd done a novel in my outline. I can tell already, and so I'm turning into a pantser now, just trying to condense things and see what I need to throw out and what how to hook everything back up again. But anyway, it's a pantser, writing by the seat of your pants. Aside from being a plotter who plots out the book to one degree or another, and that's the way I normally write, but still anymore. Anyway, we got a question now from Bill Sarn. I got to ask Cindy, what 40 pages of notes equates to in written pages? How does that translate? Is that, is it 1 for 1 or is it 1 for 10 or what? How big does the book wind up being after 40 pages of exhaustive notes?
Oh, that depends a lot on the book and how unique the world is, how much world building they need to do. And how familiar I am with the world. So with Remnant and the Stars, 40 pages worked out to be a 90,000 word novel. The second book was a bit longer than that, but the number of the pages of notes were smaller because it was carrying on from the same world building of the first one. So it was just specifically the added stuff I needed for Loudest Actions. The huge monster that I just finished, Animal Eye. The publisher tells me it's going to be 704 pages long.
Wow.
When he gets it all formatted. Wow! 75,000 words. But yeah, that's the one where we had to come up with all the game mechanics and design all the character design and what it was like. And it did help some that it was actually a fantasy story I was converting to game-lit. But it's still, like huge monsters. So it depends on how unique the world is, what the conversion is.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Did you ever think you'd be writing a telephone book one day? It's like, wow.
Yeah, because I do all my writing by hand, and then I use Dragon to read it into the computer so I don't blow my wrist apart again.
Right.
And so, as I'm writing this thing out, and I'm just flipping one page after another, and I keep going and keep going and keep going, and I get this thing read in, and I look down like 160. And
that's wonderful.
And then I knew it was going to grow from there because my rough drafts are very terse. They're often devoid of descriptions. And so my first couple of revisions are usually going back and putting all the descriptions in. And then when I submitted it to the publisher, he had a bunch more description. You didn't describe that half, and I was like, wow, really? Okay. So I had to go back and add more and more description to it and flush some other stuff out and add some more mechanics into it because I didn't get enough in there. And so, when I just sent him the last version, it was just shy of 176,000 words. Yikes!
Wow. I'm not sure I've written that many in my life. That is amazing. Now, do you expect this to be edited down, or do you expect another round of additions to this thing?
No, we're done with editing.
Okay, good.
This last weekend's big adventure was he had sent me the second round and then third round edits all within that week, and we're trying to hit a deadline to get it uploaded to Ingram by the end of the month.
Wow.
Upload code. And so he wanted to use it on this huge monster of a book. And so the revisions were coming hard, fast, and furious. But yeah, we finished it. We now have a final version. There were a couple of last things tossing back and forth where something needed to be clarified just that much more, just that much. But yeah, we declared it done, and we have the cover art settled now. He's taking it through formatting, and then I think it should be just about ready to kick off.
Oh, wow, that's impressive. That is seriously impressive. Wow. Okay. David Beam says, you guys are an inspiration. Thank you for taking our questions. And I agree with that. Thank you. Thank you,
David.
David, for coming up with the questions. Thank you all. And we're not done with these guys because we still have some more questions from our audience. But we're grateful for these wonderful people for hanging out with us. Mary Hackett says, does Cindy write screenplays? She plots like a screenwriter, writing scenes versus chapters. Mary is a screenplay writer herself. So do you write screenplays, Cindy?
I haven't. I don't know what the difference in the mechanics would be. I have been accused of writing hockey play-by-play for my rough drafts and my action scenes. But no, I haven't written screenplays. I've thought about it because I think a couple of Animal Eye and what's the other one? Condemned Courier, I think, would both work as a comic, and so I thought about trying to convert that to a screenplay. I can't imagine Animal Eye being a screenplay. It's 704 pages, but I might have to get tweaked a bit.
Yeah, flesh it out a little, right? Yeah, I get it.
I haven't because I don't know how.
Okay.
I'm not averse to the idea. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Okay. All right, and I'll ask you real quick, Charles, have you ever written a screenplay or have any desire to?
I've toyed around with it, but no, I've never had too much of a desire to do it. We've done some plays and stuff, and I've written some stuff just for a bunch of us fooling around and things. But no, I'm not. Nothing serious.
Okay. All right. Well, now we have a comment from Bill Sarden. FYI, Brian, that's me. I'm sharing tonight's show on both of my pages. So you are being watched by a cast of 10s, maybe 11 if he makes a few phone calls. So don't let success go to your heads, guys. People are watching now.
Brian, I am a big draw, so 10s is pretty good.
I understand that. And we are in awe of your presence, Charles. Anyway, and Mary Hackett, see your pants now. I know. Thanks. You're welcome, Mary. Glad to. And Brian, you can't be a pantser when you never wear pants. It's true. Anyway, Paul S. Ruff, don't forget Plantser that writes down plotting out the plot and writing the rest by the seat of their pants. Or like me, it just throws the outline out the window pretty much. And we're joined by Luke Stone. Glad to have you here. And Luke has a couple of questions. Everybody knows Luke. We all love Luke. And a couple questions. How many books can you produce a year? Charles, we'll start with you. How many are you good for per year?
Usually 3. I have
Pretty
3
good.
coming out here, so.
All right. And about what length do you generally have your books at?
Well, the Captain Hochland books are more like novellas, between 40 and 50,000 words. And then I have the next Origin book coming out, and it's almost 100,000 words.
Pretty cool.
Very cool. I think the largest book I've ever written has probably been 125,000 words, but I have never gone anything past that. Cindy's got me beat there.
I was going to say we're both feeling a little inadequate next to Cindy right now. Cindy, how many books are you good for? How many of these gravity-inducing tomes are you able to produce every year? Or your general output?
That's kind of tough to gauge because I usually have multiple projects going at once. And so one book will take me several years to put to draft, revise, find a publisher, revise, edit, then publish. But I've averaged about 1 per year. I have 8 books. Well, with Animal Eye, it'll be 8 books out, and I got the first one published in 2012.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool indeed. And Luke Stone has a follow-up question. What has been the most successful means of marketing and this, I see this as actually 2 different questions here, really. What has been the most successful means of marketing and of distributing your books? Who wants to start?
I'll take that one first, I guess.
Yeah, you saw the look of terror in Cindy's eyes. Go for it.
Yeah. I'm feeling the same thing. No, not really. So marketing, like I said earlier, the videos really help. And I have done some Amazon and some Facebook ads. Honestly, I think the Facebook ads don't work as well as the Amazon ads. I guess my theory behind the Amazon ads are people go to Amazon looking for books. So what better place to advertise than Amazon? Facebook can be hit and miss. Distributing, I don't do a lot of distributing unless it's, going to shows and selling books that way. I think one of the biggest thrills I got last year, because last year was the first year I had done any book shows, really as many as I did. I think I did 7 last year. And I had a lady come to me in Kokomo saying that she come to the show just to see me. And that really made me feel good. So not so much for David Beam next to me, who kept looking at me every time I'd be selling books. And usually the other way around, I was always staring at David Beam when he was selling books. But that was a big thrill for me to have somebody come up and say they came to that show just to buy my books. So
that's very cool. Very cool indeed. Cindy, what about you? What's been your best marketing ploy, and where do you find the most success selling your books?
That's weird because nothing's ever worked the same way twice. The thing that has gotten me the best single time result was a Facebook event. That was for the release of Urushalon 1, Like Herding the Wind. I hosted a big event for it. We did all kinds of crazy stuff, lots of games, woo! And my sales numbers were really pretty good for a while. The Facebook event for Urushalon 2, not so good. But the Urushalon 1's Facebook event was the single best ROA that I've had. Distribution, the single best event was a Barnes & Noble book signing in Buda, Texas. I brought 25 books, sold all 25 books. Barnes & Noble signing up here in Des Moines, not so good. Same book.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I do better in markets where they're not as familiar with me. I know what I should take from that. So, Rick Bradley has a question. Any advice for us newbies to keep writing multiple books? How do you guys stay inspired to keep, like you? I know you both have different stories in various stages of development, but what and I know you both have day jobs too. That's another thing that I didn't mention earlier. What keeps you going? What makes you keep wanting to put more work out into the marketplace?
I think for me, like I said, when that woman said, I come to see you for your books, was a big push to keep going. That when you're sitting at home or even on social media trying to sell your books or you're writing your books, you feel really alone. And you have to keep a positive outlook on it and keep pushing forward. And one of my biggest things is you want to go check your sales. I never go check my sales. I do once a month on the first day of each month. And then I keep going. I don't go every day and check my sales. I don't want to know what my sales are. I don't want them to depress me, or I don't want them to affect me in any way. So I keep writing and just putting out the best story I can put out, because the story I'm writing right now is the best I can write. And tomorrow will be the best I can write. So you just have to keep pushing forward and just keeping your eye on the prize. That's all you got to do.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And what about you, Cindy? What keeps you going?
I have a terrific amount of fun doing it. It is the favorite hobby that I have, and one I wish I could do more often. I also have a huge pile of unstarted, slightly started, nebulous, not entirely there yet, and mostly finished ideas. And I wrote them all down this past weekend, like 25 of them that are in various stages of production. It's just like, I would really love to write every single one of those next. I can't do it that way, but I would like to.
Yeah, I relate. Oh, that is super. That is super. Now, Bill Sarton says, what was the highest compliment that you both were paid concerning your work? Now, Charles, did you just Was that your high point there, the story you told about Kokomo, or did you have something else that springs to mind?
People come to me and say they've read, not so much at shows, but online, who have read the Captain Hockland series and who really like it as a. Someone told me that it was a traditional pulp adventure series, and that's exactly what I was going for when I created the character. So I think that's probably one of the best compliments I ever been paid. At a show, usually it's somebody I've never met before who come up and they just take the chance. But as far as compliments, I think that one's it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's cool. Cindy, what about you? What's the highest compliment you've been paid yet to date? Because I'm sure there's more coming.
I went to one of the Realmaker events, ran into another writer I know there. He was introducing me around because it was his like 5th or 6th year, my first year there. And as he was introducing me around to some of the other folks, he would introduce me as, and this is Cindy Koepp, my favorite living author.
Wow. Ooh. I got chill when I heard that. That's awesome.
How do you live up to that, Cindy? I mean, do you feel like you can go higher than that now, even though someone has said that to you? How does that make you feel internally?
That was pretty amazing. I had a severe case of imposter syndrome. Like, how did I rate that?
Yeah.
But I continue trying to push myself and advance my abilities. Try to help others out and help them get at least as far as I've gotten, and hopefully further. And I just keep pushing forward and trying to improve.
Terrific.
That's great. That is super. And in case you wondered, Sarah was chasing the elusive Wi-Fi signal, as she is wont to do. That's how we met, actually, chasing a Wi-Fi signal through a mall. And Luke Stone says, as a comic book guy, I find myself falling into some of my own tropes. After I was able to identify those, it helped me grow as a writer. Have you ever thought about your tropes, specific time you, and what are they? That is a super, super question, Luke, and I'm glad that I'm the one asking it.
Wow.
Who wants? Yeah. So, who wants to be courageous enough to tackle that one? That's heavy. That is heavy.
It's real heavy. Cindy, you first.
Let's see, my own tropes that I tend to fall into. Let's see. A lot of my stories involve someone or something disappearing and someone having to go get them back. A rescue mission in there somewhere. Most of my stories involve somebody who's dealing with a physical, emotional, or mental disability. Goofy, whacked out sense of humor. Somebody in the story's got to have my sense of humor. It just simply has to happen. And sometimes it's a very minor character, but there's still somebody there who's going to crack wild jokes. Oh, wow. It's usually someone in the story has a confidence issue. I think those are probably the main ones that I see pop up over and over. Fortunately, not all of them every time, but a couple of them show up most of the time.
Very cool. Very cool. Charles, what about you? What tropes do you go back and revisit maybe too often?
I think probably my biggest one is the villain that wants to dominate the universe and no one can stop him except for the hero.
Of course.
And I find myself creating stories that have this larger than life villain, and then I have to start telling myself I need to rein him back some and making not so much the villain that twists his mustache, but the villain that has an emotional baggage that goes along with him. So I think my biggest one is just creating overtop villains.
That is cool. That is cool. Great question, Luke. Thank you for that. And CM Davenport says, have you played with the idea of audiobooks? Now, Charles, I know you've got at least one, right?
I have one, yes. Absolution, which is the first book in the Serena Darkwood Adventures. And I do have, hopefully when the next book of that series comes out, I'd like to continue it as an audiobook series. And I've also played around with the idea of doing the Captain Hockland series as audiobooks, but I haven't gotten to that point yet. So.
All right, excellent. And what about you, Cindy? Do you have audiobooks out, or are you considering it? What's the story here?
I have. There is an audiobook out for Avatars of Web Surfer. It was an anthology, 4 authors, 10 stories, and they had an audiobook done for that one. And the narrator did a great job. It's like really incredible, especially with one of the short stories. It was called The Fall of the Invincible Man. And when I wrote it, the character didn't have much of an accent. It's sort of Midwest neutral kind of accent. When the narrator read it, he gave him sort of an up east click. And it was like the perfect choice for that character. It was like, wow, never guessed. But it was the perfect choice for that character. Animal Eye, we're talking about turning it into an audiobook as well, because audiobooks are the thing in Gamelit. In Christian spec-fic, not so much. But in Gamelit, it's almost an expectation that you released your paperback book and your ebook. When's the audio coming? And so the publisher said he's going to look into that. That's coming out from Bear Publications.
Okay, very cool.
Real quick, I got cold chills the first time I heard the narrator read my book, because I didn't know the narrator. I had found him online, and he auditioned for it. And when I heard him read my story to me, it gave me cold chills. And I don't know if you guys have had the same feeling when you've listened to your audiobooks. So it was like, wow, who wrote that?
Yeah. I have to say that right now I am finally editing my Sandestein audio, and Cookie's helping me. Thank you, Cookie. And there were times when David E. Laker was, I sat in and directed him on the recording. We did it here at my house. And there were times when I would have to sit there and clamp my hands over my mouth, because lines that I thought were just moderately funny or amusing, he would say them in such a way. I'm like, I'm going to ruin the take. I am so going to ruin the take if I don't shut up. So, yeah. Oh, I totally get that. That's a great question, CM. Thank you for asking that. And Luke Stone says, I've been writing these down for tonight. So we're busy helping him with the textbook here. Sarah, yeah, well, these two will help. Me, I'm not so sure. Anyway, Sarah asks, what would you do if you were suddenly pulled to write a genre you've never written? How would you approach something? Now, we talked earlier about genres you have not written in. But how do you think your approach to writing would differ if you were, say, approached by another publisher saying, here's something you have never done before, here's the genre you want to write in that you haven't before? How would you approach that as opposed to the way you work now?
I would go and get a lot of the books of that genre and sit down and start reading. And read until I could figure out how stories in that genre are told. Like cop dramas or something like that. I'm not used to writing, or romance, which I've never written, but I would if someone said, we're going to pay you to write this book. I'd go read a lot and just immerse myself in that genre. That's how I would do it.
Cool. Cindy, what about you? How would your approach take? You write these voluminous notes, and would you do the same thing or would it be even more so for a genre you were not totally, if you got the chance to write, a different genre? How would your approach to writing differ?
I would also go read several books on it, join a couple of groups, and just lurk for a while watching people talk about the genre. My notes would be much more intense because I'd also include how the characterization would change. My plot notes would have to be more dense, because otherwise I'm going to fall back into writing speculative fiction and Gamelit, because that's what I'm good at. But when I tackled Gamelit a couple of years ago for the first time, that's what I did. I found out what the top three popular books were at the time. Went and read all three of them. One of them I really didn't care for. One of them was really not bad. One of them was like, well, that's really good. And so then I went and grabbed a few more and checked those out. Started making notes about what was different between Gamelit and regular fantasy. Worked in some groups, watched them yak about it. Tried to ask a few questions, and that ruffled some feathers, but that's okay. I'm pretty good at ruffling feathers when I need to. And then I tackled it and went for it. Made a lot of changes along the way. My first attempt to change bird's eye into animal eye was not a 100% success. I got some feedback, tweaked it, got some more feedback, tweaked it again, and it just kept growing. So yeah, my notes would be much more intense because otherwise I'm just going to fall back into familiar pattern.
Very good, very good. Mary Hackett says, "See you, Brian." We'll see you, Mary. Thank you for allowing me to join you and your guest, Mary. Have a great evening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mary.
And let's see. Here we go. Sarah has another question. What scares you to write, if anything? Yeah. Is there any sort of that's kind of leads to a question I was going to ask, and maybe I hope I'm not misinterpreting this question, but is there a genre you would not want to write? What sort of genre would make you trepidatious to tackle? And I saw Cindy just nod just now, so she's got her answer in mind. Let's hear this.
I would not want to write anything that even resembles romance or erotica. Just not my thing. I don't write romantic subplots. It's not a genre I understand. It's not a genre I enjoy reading. So it would be nowhere I want to be.
Okay, good answer. Good answer. Charles, what about you? What genre intimidates you?
I think it's the same answer. It'd be romance. Mm-hmm. It's just that or erotica is not something I'm interested in. Maybe space erotica. I don't know. But
it's a thing. It's a thing.
But yeah, I would steer away from that. I don't mind writing romantic subplots and stories about characters, but I try to tend to stay away from getting into really just stories that the romance is the main focal point of the story.
Okay. Good answers. Good answers, both of you. Very good answers. Luke Stone says, when you write a story, do you ever have other platforms in mind, like movies or similar, or are you strictly thinking about the written word in the medium you are using?
I usually just stick with the written word that I'm using, just because I don't write to formula, I guess, and I don't stay inside the box when I'm writing. I try to take, different chances. And a lot of the stuff I would write, I don't think would be commercially viable for movies or television. Comic books, maybe. I would like to see we've talked about this. I'd like to see a Captain Hockland comic book. I think that would be pretty awesome. But as far as movies or television, I try not to keep that in mind when I'm writing.
Okay. All right. Good answer. Cindy, what about you?
I've never thought about movies or TV while I'm writing. I'm not sure many of my stories would translate well. I've thought about other written media, like comics or games, but that's about as far afield as I've gotten.
I see. All right. Luke Stone follows that up with, we all need reviews. I know. I wrote a book about it. And how much do you let a positive or a negative review affect you and your writing? Do they get to you, or do you find a positive review just builds you up, or do you like, what is this person thinking, or what? What are your thoughts when you read a review?
I don't read my reviews. good or
Okay.
bad. I steer away from them. I when I first started, I read my reviews, and of course, I got bad reviews, and it really took me down. So after that, I made it a rule not to read my reviews, good or bad. I have taken parts of reviews and used them in advertising, and usually when I do that, I have my wife go through and pick out the best parts, so I don't have to take time to read the reviews because I don't want them to bring me down, and I don't want them to give me a swollen head either. I don't want them to think, well, I'm Charles F. Millhouse, I'm a big writer. I want to be who I am. I want to write the best stories that I can write, and I don't want the reviews to change how I write.
Mm-hmm. I get it. And Cindy, what about you? How do you deal with reviews?
I do read mine. I don't get a whole lot of them. But when favorable reviews like, wow, that's cool, I'm glad you liked it. Unfavorable reviews like, well, everybody's allowed an opinion. Opinions are like eyeballs. Everybody's got at least two. Some are better than others.
Well said.
Yeah.
Now, talking about other media, if somebody came with a fistful of cash and said, I want to turn one of your books into a major motion picture, which book would you hand them? And we'll start with Cindy this time.
Mindstorm. I think it's the one that would make the translation the best.
Okay, all right. Why? Because it's more visual, or did you precast it in your head when you wrote, or what? What would make it a superior movie?
Again, it's one of those cases where if you track it all the way back to its origin, you would never believe where it ended up. But the original, if you trace it all the way back to the start, started out as Star Wars fanfic.
Okay.
And so it was already in that neighborhood. And then it mutated further and further and further and further and further. And you'd be doing good to figure out where in there the Star Wars showed up. But because it started there, I think it's the one that would be the closest related to get back to it.
Okay, cool. Well, look at it this way. Twilight started as fanfic for, or no, 50 Shades of Grey started as fanfic for Twilight. So,
Wow.
Yeah, seriously, it did. Stephanie Meyer just didn't think the characters were having enough sex for some reason. And somehow it, morphed into that book. Which I'm not gonna throw shade at it, but anyway, Charles, what about you? What book would you like to see in a movie form?
Probably Absolution.
I gotta agree.
It's the first to Darkwood, and it's probably the closest thing to what's called Formula. She's basically a cross between Han Solo and Lara Croft. A smuggler in space, and I think that would be something that would be translate really well into movie or television.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Okay, real quick, starring role, the lead character in each book that you just mentioned. Cast it right now, Charles.
Gina Torres.
Ooh, I'm there. And what about you, Cindy? What about your book?
Oh, wow. This would be easier if I knew actor names. We
ask the hard questions here.
Yeah, I'm terrible at names. Let's see if I can come up with. I'm drawing a total zero.
Just say Ryan Reynolds. He's in everything these days.
Let's see, the guy who played Magneto in X-Men First Class would be a good Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I have an even harder time trying to come up with one for Calla.
Do I need to move on?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, let's move on because I don't know. I don't remember the actor's name either. Anyway, Eric Hawkins says hello, everyone.
Hi, Eric.
He said quickly, changing the subject. Luke Stone, how do you feel about authors like Nicholas Sparks, who write very similar stories and tend to crank them out quickly and seem very unconcerned about the movie adaptation following the book? # the book is always better. Words to live by. Well, how do you, that's a very good question. When you see writers like achieving success, do you, and I'm not asking you to, like I said, I'm not asking you to throw shade at anyone, but, do you see writers who have a great deal of success and you maybe are thinking, what are they doing that I'm not? Or, why are people so crazy about them? Do you have authors like that in mind? And I see Cindy already nodding. So must be me. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of authors. I've picked up a book and it's been highly acclaimed. Read it, went, ew. Why?
Yeah.
What makes that fabulous? My first draft is more interesting. But I see them get like incredibly amazing success, and like, that's cool. I'm glad it works for you. Do the voodoo that works for you. I'm gonna go play over here.
And I think we're freezing up.
Yeah, you a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, I get it. Yeah. Charles, how about you?
I hear a lot of people mention Stephen King, how he just cranks out book after book after book, and they're not as good as they used to be. And quite honestly, I've not read a lot of Stephen King. I think, I don't know, that's kind of a question that I'm not quite sure. I think them being successful for what they've worked hard to get to that point, and they are making money in the field they chose to do. I'd imagine somewhere down the road, maybe money changed them in some way. And I'd imagine that would happen to the best of us. I don't know if I'll ever get that chance. Sure would like to find out. But I don't know. I like that they made it something out of themselves, and their work is revered. But I could imagine writers like Stephen King just getting monotonous, telling the same kind of story over and over again.
Yeah. And I look at James Patterson, who releases like 50 books every 2 minutes, thanks to all of his, ghost writers and everything. And I saw the book. I think it was last year. He was credited on the cover with former President Bill Clinton. And I'm like, who wrote that book? It wasn't anywhere. Those two never came anywhere near it, I'm sure. It's like, who are they trying to kid? But anyway, we asked the question, and the answer comes back from our wonderful Nevermorians, Michael Fassbender.
That's it.
Yes. And Rick Bradley agrees. Michael Fassbender was Magneto. And
Visitor, I think, would be a good Callow.
Oh, there we go. Very good. Now, Rick Bradley has follow up with a question. Have any of your stories changed right before your eyes?
Everyone.
That'd be my answer. What about you, Cindy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Remnant in the Stars and Mindstorm both mutated very severely from what they originally started out as to turn into what they are now. Some of my other books, they may not have, the storyline may not have changed, but the book had more twists and turns than a bag full of pretzels to get to where it ended up. Windherding, or Rushalon 1 and 2 both started out set in 1865, and then as I wrote it, it started sounding too much like the Lone Ranger, because Ed was the Texas Ranger and Amaya was helping him out. And as I was plotting, I was like, yeah, this sounds like half the Lone Ranger episodes I've seen. Let's change the setting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
I tend to never write a story unless I have the ending first. I always have to have the ending first, and then I start writing, and it's just the journey of how it gets to that ending. Very seldom does the ending ever change. It has on occasion, but usually it's the journey to get there, and then as you're writing, you realize this character I'm writing is about to die, and you weren't planning on killing this character because you had a whole nother sub story to go with that character, but sadly that character just didn't make it. And that's to me, the thrill about writing is you don't know how you're going to get to the end, only that you're going to get there.
Yeah, and even pantser like myself, I keep mentioning that I throw the plot out, as I'm writing because the characters change in my head. I'm sure you guys find the same thing. And so by the time I start writing them to the time I finally get rid of them in the story, they've become real characters in my head. And sometimes I blame them for the changes in my story. It couldn't be me. I usually have more control. So, couldn't possibly be me. Meredith Longren says, that was a great question. I think in most books, there is an element of romance. It helps the story arc because it's rife with conflict and sweet resolution. Well said, Meredith. Thank you for that. Okay. And when we're talking comic books, Luke Stone just happens to know a guy who knows a thing or two about making a comic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think I can make a referral later if you folks are interested. So
do that.
Yeah. Let's see. Here we go. Oh, darn it, Luke! Why do you have to bring up Sparks? I cry at just the mention of his name, says Eric Hawkins. We made Eric cry. Anyway, Luke Stone then goes on. What do you think of the practice of ghostwriters? Do you guys have an opinion on ghostwriters?
I can't afford one.
Why a ghostwriter would do it? Because if you're going to take all that time and effort to write that, I would think you'd want your name attached to it somewhere. But for someone hiring a ghostwriter, I don't get it. I don't understand. And maybe if I understood, then I would feel happier about it. But I don't understand the phenomenon.
I can see ghostwriters being used for someone who's writing a biography, like someone who was in politics or someone who doesn't normally write. They sit down and put down their ideas, and then they hand it off to the ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter reformats it. That I could probably understand. But someone like what we do, I just can't understand that. Why would you want someone else to, even though you're taking the credit? It would just bother me that I didn't put down those words. It wasn't my achievement. It was somebody else's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do know a couple of ghostwriters, and they have 3 very good reasons for doing it. Do, re, mi. It pays. Okay. So I understand that from the strictly mercenary point of view. Sarah, do you have a secret passion for the villains over the heroes or heroines in anything you write? How invested are you in your villains?
If I like my villain enough, I make sure that he's got some of the best lines. He always survives, and so he can come back again later. Sometimes the villain can be really fun to write. Just like actors say, villains are better to play than the heroes. I think a lot of times villains are more fun to put down on the page than the hero is, because the hero is going to triumph, but the villain has the best lines to try to stop them and the best ideas, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Cindy? How do you feel about your villains?
When I'm designing the plot and giving everybody character arcs, I make sure the villain has one too, except theirs works backwards. So they have their success early on, and then they blow it later.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think the best way to write the villain is to make him. He thinks he's the hero. He's in the right when he's doing what he's doing, and if you write your villain like that, then you're going to get a really good villain.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's when I write villains, it's part. I found I was doing this, and it's a question I ask my beta readers: could you relate to him? I like villains. Right, I like writing villains where you don't necessarily have to like them, but you understand why they're doing it. You know, Yeah, so that's my opinion there. I can't let an hour go without somebody telling somebody what my opinion is. Anyway, Luke Stone says you both are very talented. I agree. I have found that our our adversities produce the most growth. What is the biggest challenge each of you have faced to get to where you are? And I'll give you a moment. I'll pause while you both think about this because this is a heavy question. And it's an excellent question, Luke Stone. Thank you for asking that. We all have challenges on our way up the ladder and our sometimes desperate attempt not to go sliding back down it again. What has been maybe the one biggest thing you've had to overcome to ascend to where you are in the writing field? Who feels confident taking that one? Cindy, you're nodding your head. How about that?
Time. Because I do work a day job. For 14 years, that day job was teaching 4-footers. That's their height, not their leg count. And that's a 100-hour-a-week job. So the only time I had to write was like Sunday afternoon and during breaks when I didn't have training or prep work to do. Mm-hmm. My job's a little less intense now. It's a regular 40-hour-a-week phenomenon. So I get more time for it now. But in some of the genres I write, there are people who can stay home and do it for their day job. They do it for a living, and so their production rate is much higher, and that means that I have more noise to overcome.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, very good. How about you, Charles?
I do work a full-time job, but I get the summers off. I got an extra month off because of what's going on. And that really helps when it comes to, I think my biggest challenge is myself. And I sometimes think, am I good enough? Am I going to be, can I overcome things? Like doing this show 3 or 4 years ago, there's no way you would have got me on to do this. And I was kind of apprehensive earlier this evening, walking back and forth. And what if I look like a complete idiot? But I'm pretty good at doing that. So,
that's my
well,
job.
yeah. Well, I am
I've
on the screen with you, so yeah, okay.
Yeah, you got me here.
But it's when I was younger, my biggest challenge to get to where I am now was to overcome my self-conscious and to make sure that to do something like this, what we're doing now, or even just to walk up to somebody at a table, like you go to a show and you want to meet a writer, not necessarily a big writer, but just another writer. I get apprehensive. So I have to fight past those. I have to fight past it to push myself to do that. Writing is no problem. It's presenting myself who I am, making my videos. You see my videos because they're 15 minutes of what I say before I start doing my interview, but it takes me a couple hours to do it because I get nervous in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. So to do this now, and I'm not on drugs and I'm not drinking alcohol, it's just water, I promise. But that's probably my biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I can see that. It is tough to step outside yourself. And we're still getting these great questions. Rick Bradley wants to know favorite villain you've written and also favorite villain in a book that is not yours.
Ooh.
Do I have to vamp for a little while on this one? Or
I know which my favorite one is that I've written. It's just the favorite one of
Cindy?
One that I wrote was the one for Mindstorm, because he is stronger and more experienced than both of the main characters together. And so he had a specific goal in mind, and it did involve taking out both of the main characters. So they had to find a way to circumvent that, and it ended up being the weaker character whose weakness defeated him. My favorite villain in a book that I didn't write would be Grand Admiral Thrawn in Dark Force Rising, because he's sneaky, highly analytical.
Very good answer. Very good answer. Charles?
Favorite villain in a book I didn't write is Nicodemus Arcleone. He's in the Harry Dresden books. It goes back to the villain thinking he's the hero, and he is so suave and debonair and so focused on what he wants to accomplish, and which really gives the hero something to fight off against. So Nicodemus Archleon, I love the name too.
Good name.
And then villain that I wrote is in the Captain Hochland adventures. His name is Maximilian Odenthal. He's the kind of character that also thinks that the world should be surrounded around him and who he is, and everyone should bend to his will. But he's so nice about doing it.
I like that. That's good answers from both of you. Bill Sarton does ask a question that has been asked about dealing with criticism and how it affects you personally. We did answer that earlier, but that's still a good question, Bill. Thank you for asking. Luke Stone asks, how much of you goes into your characters?
A lot. Each of the characters will have at least some facet of my personality involved, and many of the characters will also involve facets of personality from other people I know that help them keep their voices straight. So I mentioned earlier that most of my stories have at least one character with my whacked out sense of humor. And that most of my stories contain at least one character with a disability, even if it's not one of the ones that I deal with. And so there are bits of me in most of the characters, and certainly most of the main characters.
Very cool. Very cool.
I'd have to agree. A lot of the characters that I write, there's a little bit of different aspects of who I am in them. The Oz character in the Captain Hochland books always is the comic relief, and I write him as when I get uncomfortable and crack silly jokes, and that part of me goes into him. Or when I write the Hardy character in the Captain Hochland books, he's more straightforward and wants things done exactly by the book, and he hates it when someone doesn't go along with the plan that they've set up. So, and that's a little bit of me too. So a little bit of every different persona that I have gets bled out into my characters in some way.
Very cool. Very cool. And let's see. Teresa Dunn says, Cindy and Charles, I have enjoyed listening to your answers. You have been quite helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
All right, very cool. And Sarah says, what if the villain turns out to be the hero? What would you do if that happened surprisingly in your mind through the plot?
That's never happened. It will now that she's said that.
Your check's in the mail, Sarah.
That's never happened to me before. How about you, Cindy?
Yeah.
Because I plot everything in the universe out before I start writing, including the character arcs, that has not happened. It would take a lot of doing for it to happen, because it would have to totally mutate the entire plot line and most of the world building. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it takes some serious doing.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Great question, Sarah. Great question. Rick Bradley, who is your favorite supporting character that you've written? And then your favorite from a book you've not written? Let's pull that in. So who wants that one? Who's your favorite supporting character in your books?
Absolution. The character of Revo, who is the robot.
That was a good character.
He's my favorite secondary character that I've created. And in a book, well, actually, it kind of draws back to the Dresden Files again, because there's a character in the Dresden Files called Bob. He's a spirit that lives inside the skull. And matter of fact, when I created Revo, I based him on that character from the Dresden Files. So.
All right. And Cindy, what about you?
My favorite supporting character is Tearsel. Tearsel is a griffin in Lines of Succession. If you take a crazy parrot and combine it with the attitude of a hyperprotective Doberman, that's Tearsel.
Oh my god, I'm loving that already. And somebody agrees with your choice. Yes, Revo.
Thanks, Rick.
Are we not men? No, never mind. No, he's not. Let's see here. And let's see. Got that one. And here we go. Luke Stone says, great answers. I've enjoyed picking your brains.
Thanks, Luke.
All right. And Rick Bradley agrees. The villain becoming the hero would be a heck of a twist. Dave Woodrum just showed up here. He had a conference call this late at night. Holy cats. And have either of you intentionally inserted any certain morals in your story? Or I'm sure he didn't mean morals as in mushrooms, but have you inserted any specific moral lessons in what you have written? And I'd like to know what they are. And I see Cindy nodding her head. What's your answer?
Mindstorm dealt with discrimination. Because Kala has a severe disability that limits her power, she's looked down upon by most of the normal members of her race. And so there was a specific through line in that book about not counting someone out because they're weaker than you are. And that's what gave rise to the final solution, where she's the one who defeats the bad guy because her powers are weak. Remnant in the Stars also had a deliberate moral in there that there is no mistake so severe it can't be forgiven.
Very cool. I like that. That's very unique, especially that latter one. I like that. Charles, what about you? Same question.
Okay. Well, I grew up reading tales of good and evil and right and wrong, and I think I kind of inject that in everything I write. In the Captain Hawkland stories, it's set in the 1930s, so there's women trying to be treated fairly, and people of color being treated fairly. In the origin books, it's about the rich and the poor, and those who are poor being treated like slaves. And so I've always tried to, when I write stories, to have some kind of one person in a story, no matter who it is, have a moral compass and to keep their head level. I've never written a story. That was one of my biggest gripes about the Game of Thrones series and the books. There wasn't any characters who were redeeming, no redeeming characters. And I think every story should have at least one redeeming character, someone someone can look up to and they can say, stop, this is right, this is wrong. Either it be Serena Darkwood, even though she's a loner, she knows right from wrong, or Captain Hawkland, who is the epitome of the hero. So I try to inject that in everything I write.
All right. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love seeing morals in books because some days you don't see too many of it in the headlines. So, right. And Luke Stone says, villain becoming the hero. I think of the movie Mastermind. Good choice. Good choice. And I love Revo, says CM Davenport. So
thanks, Shirley. I know you do.
there's another point for Revo, who will be getting his own spin-off book now as a result of your votes. So we are rapidly approaching 2 hours, and you two have been amazing. I've had a great time, and we'll take one more question here from Bill Sarton, and then we're gonna let these people go back to writing. We've kept them away too long. Bill Sarton, if both of you had the opportunity to have the celebrity of your choice to write an introduction to one of your current or future books, who would it be and why? Now, I'm lucky. I have had that. Roy Thomas, one of my writing idols, did the introduction to the original Skyman Battles, the Master of Steam. And when he, see, I'm vamping to give you guys more time to think. I haven't lost a guest yet. No, but I asked him to write that, because we've been friends for about 15 years, and he wrote back. And when he wrote the part about if pulps ever make a comeback, then Morris's Skyman could become the next Doc Savage. And I'm sitting here like the waterworks opened up. This is the nicest thing I said. Yeah, I was like, I totally fanboyed. So, so anyway, back to the question here. I've given you a little time there. Who is the celebrity of your choice to write an introduction to one of your current or future books, and who would it be and why? And who wants to go first? And everyone's thinking the other one, right?
No, I'm ready.
Okay, go Charles.
Go Charles. Probably Marv Wolfman from comic book fame, who wrote a lot of Omega Men, New Teen Titans. He wrote The Vigilante,
Tomb of Dracula,
and I think I would choose him because I grew up on his stories, and it was his stories that I focused on when I first started writing. So my answer is Marv Wolfman.
Good answer. Very good answer. Sydney, what about you?
See, there you go again with asking me to remember celebrity names.
Oops, sorry.
Kathy Tyers was really kind of amused with the first dozen or so pages of Into the Open, which she read as a critique. So if she could write the foreword for that, that would be the bomb diggity.
Oh, I hear you. Very good. Very good. And let's see. And let's, with some accolades here, Sarah says, wow, 2 hours. Thank you for everything. And Rick Bradley says, thank you all for your answers. You two are great. And please keep up the amazing work.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Yeah. So in closing here, a couple more things, and then we'll set you free. Is there any question I forgot to ask you that you would like to talk about? You get one chance. No is a valid answer.
No is a valid answer. Well, I have a lot of those. No, I think you mentioned our websites, where they can contact us.
We're getting to that. That's the second part.
Oh, that's the second. Well,
that's the second part. Trust me on this one, Charles. I haven't lost one yet.
I know you're a professional at this.
That's right. Trust the man with the fez. I'm telling you.
I can't think of anything.
How about you, Cindy? Anything else you want to talk about?
Nope. I think you covered pretty much everything I could think of.
Okay, great. Actually, it wasn't me. It was these guys here with all their great questions. I want to thank everyone out there who supplied us with questions and some attaboys or attagirl in this case, to our great guests here. And now I'm going to let each of you have a little bit of time and tell the people what you're up to, where they can contact you, and if you want to leave a book or two that you think would be a great introduction to your style. Let's start with Cindy. All right, here we go. Cindy, tell them about you, why you're awesome.
All right. I write mostly science fiction and fantasy and gamelit. You can catch up with information on all of my works on my webpage, which is ckoepp.com. I also have an Amazon author page. It's a bit.ly address, Koepp Amazon. The best introduction to my work that's not part of a series would be Earth, mine, not an avalanche. Yay. Condemned Courier. This is a fantasy story about this character right here. She has to race across the continent to find evidence of a conspiracy to bring it back to her king before the revolution wipes out both her race and humans.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Cindy. And now let's turn to Charles F. Millhouse, author. Let's tell the people how you can be found.
Where you can find me on stormgatepress.com. You can also find me on the Facebook, author Charles F. Millhouse Presents. It's a Facebook group where everybody can come and talk to one another. If you're a writer or an artist or have a creative endeavor of some kind, you can place that also on the group. You can also email me at chuckmillhouse@gmail.com or stormgatepress@gmail.com. Everything I write is a series of some way, trilogy, continuing series like the Captain Hawkland books. But if you want to read one book that shows my style the best and is the first book of a series, because actually it's a first book, there is no series, but there is going to be a second one eventually, is Absolution, the Serena Darkwood adventures. It's the story about Serena Darkwood, who is a smuggler, and she wants to be a loner, but she ends up getting caught up in a kidnapping of a royal family, and she has to rescue them before the galaxy goes into total chaos and civil war.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Thank you very much, Charles F. Millhouse. And thank you, Cindy Koepp. I want to be more on an equal footing with you guys. There you go. Thank you both for participating in tonight's extravaganza. I appreciate it, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Had a great time.
Woohoo!
All right, best comment I could get. Anyway, we also want to thank you out there. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you all for your great questions, and we hope you'll tune in 1 week from tonight. We'll be announcing on the Rising Tide Publications page, somewhere there, right there, what next week's subject will be about. Also, don't forget you can catch us on risingtide.pub, and also every morning we do Nevermind the Furthermore, and we'll have a post-game wrap-up tomorrow on Nevermind the Furthermore at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central. We hope you all have a great, great night. Please support these two amazing authors. Thank you very much. Remember, stay smart, stay safe, wash your damn hands, and never apologize for being awesome. Thank you, and have a great night for being here on Clever Title Pending. I've got to go now. Bye-bye.